Today I am sewing a Simplicity 7973 1960s men's shirt. And these are all the pattern pieces cut out. I will be doing view 1, just the shirt, but it does also offer a vest that is reversible, which is maybe something I'll do in the future for my husband. It's my first time making a men's shirt, and it is totally different. Look at the pattern. Look how dark these lines are. Why didn't they print women's patterns with dark ink like this? I was just astounded by the better quality. So I didn't even end up tracing it. I did adjust the measurements a little bit for the chest size. But yeah, way easier. So the first thing I did was shirt interfacing and then cutting all the pieces out, of course, which was fairly straightforward. Then the first part, I needed to put the interfacing in, and it told me what size to cut out. This was a bit different. I had never done it like this before. Here it is. I have it basted in, and I'll rip out those stitches later. And yeah, this was new. The men's pattern construction is quite different from women's. So then I went on to the sewing the pockets, which had a nice little open closing cover on it, which I'd never done before that either, and that I really enjoyed. The pocket was fairly straightforward, like all other pockets except for that top flap. Okay, and then I had to move on to the pocket placement. So of course I used the pattern to find the location of that pocket, and instead of 2, I only did 1 pocket on this because that's what my husband wanted. But 2, of course, is just as easy as 1, really. Yeah, so I went ahead and placed that on there, pinned it, and sewed it on. And yeah, it wasn't too difficult. Even sewing the top flap, I wasn't 100% sure, but it turned out quite well. Okay, so yeah, we're getting those pins in all the way around and putting that top flap right above it, just to sew across the top to hold it in place. Very cute. This also would have been nice if I would have monogrammed it. I would, add that additional personal touch. But this one I just didn't do. That might be something you'd consider before putting the pocket on, though. Alright, so next we're going to add the back darts, which were pretty easy, soft pleats. That was easy enough, and I used some of my disappearing ink, and I went ahead and removed it just in case. But as you see, I probably could have left it, but since I didn't know how far I would be covering this pleat, I just wanted to play it safe by going ahead and removing it before proceeding to the next part of this project. Good quality pens are treasures. As you'll find out later when I use Taylor's chalk, it didn't come out so easily. But this Choco pen is really great, and maybe I will put the title in the description. Then I went on to the yoke. The yoke was very difficult. I read the instructions. I didn't know what to do. I finally went and looked at a video with a men's tailor of how he did it, and let's just say it was quite difficult, but thankfully it came out fine. So what they had to do is kind of pin it in place on either side. This part wasn't that hard. I ended up having to add another pleat because it didn't quite fit, which again wasn't too bad. And then I just sew it into place right here. Again, not too hard. The part there, that was hard, flipping it through. Okay, yay, we got that together. That one was a big challenge, and it's done. Now on to the collar. Of course, you have to do the interfacing and snip the little notches and then flip it over, preparing just like always. And now we're folding that interfacing over. And this part, initially I stitched down, and of course then I ended up ripping those stitches out because it looked too feminine to me. So if you're used to making women's clothes, you don't really know, like, oh, maybe that looks a bit more feminine. So yeah, I had to change up some things that I do, like this wide lapel or interfacing here. I think does look more feminine in my opinion. And my husband didn't mind, but I was like, I don't think it's really what I would want to make. So I did end up adjusting this part later on. I left the width of it, but I ended up stitching it not against the shirt like I do in a lot of my own personal blouses. Okay, so as you can see here, I did originally stitch it down and I ended up ripping those stitches out and just stitching it to itself later on. Because once I saw him wear it, I was like, oh no, this looks a bit feminine. But here, yeah, I've got it together at least, and yay, the collar is on, which was a bit tricky. Alright, so moving on to making the little slits on the sides of the shirt, which is going to give it a nice fit and comfort. This was also a new process, which I didn't quite understand from the directions. But after I did it, I finally figured out, you know what? It's like preparing a teeny tiny waistband for each side of the slit. So when you think of it in terms of, oh, this is just like a miniature waistband that you pin on and you sew in place, it's actually not that difficult. All right, then we moved on to the sleeves and preparing those, like the part around the cuff. So these also had to be adjusted and fixed, and then yeah. So first I drew the little place where you make the slit for the sleeve and the pleats. Okay, and then I made like those little mini waistbands again, like this, to put on those pleats, or put on the slits. It's so cute. Yeah, first time is hard, but now I'm like, okay, just like a miniature waistband. Preparing it the same way. So I got that sewed on, I sewed those pleats, and yay, this part is finished. Okay, so this is our progress. I also sewed the side seams down, and then I sewed the sleeve edges together and finished those. Okay, now I gathered the sleeves just like this to put inside of the shirt. And actually this process is quite different for this pattern. They did not tell me to sew the side seams and then insert the sleeve. Rather, they're like, insert the sleeve and then do the side seams. But I did it the way I do women's blouses. And again, I think, I didn't know that sewing for men's clothing can in many ways be quite different than for women's. And I don't know why that is exactly, but again, I'm not really a professional, so I'm sure there is a reason. But, you know, I did it just like I do my own blouses. I sewed those side seams, like I said, and just inserted the sleeves, for better or for worse. That's what I did. So here's what our progress is at this point. And I'm like, oh, I hope you're level with each other. But yeah, they look pretty good. I was worried also about the gathers, but it ended up being just perfect. And they went in very easily. So now I just went ahead and finished the seam by doing kind of like a faux French seam, which I've shown in a previous video. And it looks really nice when it's finished, and it wasn't hard to do. Then I prepared the cuffs just like you do a collar. You prepare cuffs exactly the same way. Yay. That part was easy. And then I went ahead and hemmed the bottom of the shirt after, of course, I had unpicked the sides. And yay, that's how it looks. Then going ahead and sewing on those cuffs and putting the buttonhole placements with tailor's chalk that didn't want to come out easily. Anyway, here are my buttons. I ended up just doing white. I almost did a contrasting black, but my husband was like, nah, I just want white. So I'm like, okay. And now I've got to get the perfect buttonhole. So this is some scrap fabric. I'm just making sure that my buttonhole is going to be the perfect size for these buttons, and that my machine will do it right. I had to try a few times because for whatever reason, I wasn't getting the right size of buttonhole, even though it's supposed to measure the button at the back. Anyway, you kind of have to just fiddle with your machine until you figure it out and get to know your machine. essentially. So yay for scrap fabric, because it gives you the time to actually figure all of that out. Okay, yay, we got the right one. And this is the one I'm going to be using, the right one, to put on the buttons. Okay, and now you are looking at the completed shirt. Yay, doesn't it look beautiful? All nice and clean and pressed. And here is my wonderful husband modeling that for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you so very much for taking time and watching this. Have a great day.